So, I'm here to tell you some money stories. Once upon a time, there was a 16-year-old girl in 1947 in rural eastern North Carolina. She was the sixth daughter in a family of sharecroppers. If you don't know what a sharecropper is, it means she was basically extremely poor. And she had a dream that she would marry a lovely man, a kind man, and a rich man. Because she knew that that was her only option in order to make her life financially stable. She pulled it off. She married the richest boy in the county. And she also loved him. What she didn't know was that her new father-in-law was a gambling addict. This is a money story. By the time her daughter was 16 years old, the family business was gone. The income was gone. And she had learned a very important money story, that illusion was money in that family. That in order to pay the gambling debts, money was shuffled around all the time. All that was left were a couple mink coats, a couple diamond rings, and that was it. This is my grandmother's money story. This is my great-grandfather's money story. This is my mother's money story. And therefore, it's my money story. Now, my mother was 18 years old in 1968 when she went away to college. And she had her mother's money stories, that she needed to be a beautiful ornament, to find a man that could take care of her financially. But this is a little complicated by the fact that it's 1968, and the civil rights movement has come through the South and upended the social order. That feminism is starting to take hold. And there's a question, oh wait, a woman could have a career of her own, maybe. And the Vietnam War is happening, and what we understand about authority is starting to shift. So her money story is becoming complicated. Now, she tried to do it. She got married. Didn't work out so well. By the time the 80s roll around, I'm a little kid. She gets divorced. This happens in the 80s. That's definitely a money story. Because women suddenly had the ability to set their own destiny. They could be independent of men. By the time I had my 16th birthday, she bought me this diamond ring. And she said, "Darling, if you ever need any money, you can always hawk it." And that is literally how I grew up. My mother knew that I needed to have the best education she could possibly get for me. That I needed to be eloquent and lovely and take ballet classes, etc. But we did not have the money for any of that. She was a single mother, she was working multiple jobs, and so she regularly hawked her jewelry at 138% interest in order to pay my Catholic school tuition. So that money story from my great-granddaddy was still alive and well, the shuffling of the money, this idea that women needed to be an ornament, and yet somehow also a career woman. These are my money stories. Now, I think about money stories all day long because I'm the CEO and founder of Modernist Financial. We're an investment management firm and financial planning firm. But before that, I was an artist. I was a sculptor and a writer. And before that, I was a daughter and a granddaughter. And money stories are part of what I think about all the time. So what we're going to do today is I'll talk about money stories, obviously, But I'm also going to give you some tools to help you discover your own money story. So everyone should have this month's Portland Monthly on their chair or under their chair. And there's a little handout in there that says Money Stories. We're going to be referencing that during my talk in a little moment. And there should be a pencil around as well. So you just want to have that handy. My goal is to help give you some tools to discover your own money story, some tools to help you think about how you might want your money story to shift, and some tools to think about your vision for your own financial future. And then we'll identify a couple little steps that you can implement in order to take action on these items. So back to money stories. Let me maybe define it a little more specifically than my own experience. Money stories come from a ton of different places, right? We have historical money stories and religious money stories. We have money stories that are cultural, as well as gendered, political and racial money stories. We have money stories that are also cultural and gendered, and we have romantic money stories. Money stories are inherently intersectional. And as an intersectional feminist, I think that it's very important that we really dig in and understand that money stories are complicated and that each of us hold our own complicated, beautiful money story that comes from a ton of different places. Now, the other thing about money stories that I think is very important is that most of our stories are stereotypes. They're not particularly helpful. They're tired tropes, right? They tend to sit on polarized ends of the story spectrum. So we've got ladies who lunch and bossy broads. There's no middle way there. We've got silver spoons and bootstraps. We've got spendthrifts and tightwads. And I'll tell you, when you Google search these, spendthrifts are always women and tightwads are always men. Didn't know that about their money story, actually. And then we've got the American dream and the anti-American dream. And my personal favorite, starving artists and sellouts. So why am I so concerned about these stories? Well, financial planning and investment management is about creating an arc of changes and understanding the changes that we need to make in order to get to what we want to be in the future. So if I want to be a fabulous 75-year-old Georgia Lee Hussey who has financial security, like she didn't have growing up, and I want to have a comfortable lifestyle, and I want to give away oodles of money, I might have to make some changes in my life today in order to make that happen, right? I might need to change my spending. I might need to adjust my portfolio. I might need to think about the value of my company and how that works into all this. So change is key, right? One of my favorite money stories in the financial industries and in our financial culture is that money is logical. All you need is the right chart or graph or pie chart, and if you have that right data, you're gonna make a really good financial decision, right? That's all you gotta have. Well, unfortunately, research shows us that financial decisions are 100% emotional. 100% emotional, which really counteracts this idea that logic is our solution. So logic isn't going to answer it for us. I think it's important for context. We need to understand what are some various scenarios, how could these things play out. But if we're going to ultimately make our decision from our emotions, we need to be conscious. We know that in order to make change, stories are actually extremely effective in order to envision those change. Again, what does that 75-year-old self look like? Money stories are also really vulnerable. I'm not supposed to tell you that my great-grandfather was a gambling addict. I'm not supposed to tell you that my mother hawked her jewelry to pay for my Catholic school education. But growing up as a queer kid, I'm telling you, closets are not good. We do not want to have those things. We need to bring the sense of shame and embarrassment and sadness. We need to bring it out of the closet. We need to talk about these things. So I know that in our stories we can find our emotional selves and our logical selves when we think about our relationship with money. And because I'm a certified financial planner, but I'm also an artist and a great, great, great lover of the arts, I know that we need to be creative when we do this. It's going to be a whole lot more fun, but also it will help us make better decisions. So when I was 18, I got a gigantic scholarship to a really fancy liberal arts college on the East Coast. All that work my mama had done really paid off. And I made the very practical decision of studying installation sculpture and creative writing. And then I made the even more practical decision of deciding to be a professional artist and writer. And when I was in college, I learned two really important money stories for the way my life has rolled out. One is that of the starving artist. There's Basquiat right there, he's a great example. That in order to have creative integrity, I had to be broke. Van Gogh is another good example, as earlier. Problem was, I didn't quite get this till later. Almost everybody else I went to college with came from a lot of money. So a little dissonance there. The other is that I became politically active when I was in college. There's the X-ray specs. If you're into punk rock, I highly recommend it. And punk rock taught me that capitalism was evil, that money was the root of all evil, right? So a little problematic when I'm trying to be a professional, anything really, but especially an artist and a writer. Now I kept working at it, finally decided I couldn't do it. I needed to be financially stable if I was going to have emotional stability. It's just, this history made that very important. So I moved to Portland where I had a bunch of friends, and I made the most adult decision I could think of, what everybody had been telling me to do. I bought a house, right? That's what you're supposed to do when you're an adult, you buy a house. It was 2005, if that timing seems important to you. It was the subprime mortgage crisis, which is the only way I was ever going to buy a house because I had a 550 credit score and no money in savings. And somebody gave me a ranch house. I still can't tell you why. And I was terrified because suddenly I went from my rent being X to my mortgage being 3X. And I looked around and I was like, I don't know anything about money. Hawking my jewelry was not going to get me through this particular issue, right? And so, I'm a good liberal arts student. I'm an autodidact. So I started learning everything I could about money. I was committed. I was going to learn how to budget and invest, and I was going to learn compound interest and growth. So I did all that. And it was fascinating, which I was deeply ashamed of as an artist. I was like, I'm not supposed to be into this. This stuff is dirty. But then I was also investing in a lot of therapy. Remember the halcyon days of $15 copays? And I went twice a week sometimes. It was fantastic. Because I was starting to see that no matter how much I knew the tools and the information, I wasn't making behavioral change. I still had my mother's and my great-grandfather's behavior of moving money around for no real reason, of shopping when I was stressed out, of basically undermining my success. But as I started to do more therapy, I started to see the way that these stories were driving my behavior. And finally, I put them together, and I was able to pay my mortgage. I had a little reserve fund. It was adorable. It got blown pretty immediately, but I had one. And I didn't have a pile of overdraft fees anymore. Meanwhile, I'm looking around my community and I'm seeing that none of my other friends know anything about money either. And a lot of my friends were becoming quite successful. They were getting book deals, they were getting record deals. And they had the same starving artist and sellout stories. And I was like, you all don't know anything about money, and you believe these stories, we are in serious trouble, right? Because you're the core of our creative community. We need you to be successful. We need you to be philanthropic. We need you to not blow all the money. And so I also realized they had this story that they weren't good at math. This one's an ever-present money story. Not good at math, not good at numbers. Creatives are really, this is very common. And so a vision was born that I could help my people be good at money. That I could teach them the skills and the emotional relationship that would help them make better financial decisions. And so I sold the house and got myself a formal education as a certified financial planner. So I started my practice in a big brokerage firm. I grew up with hanging out mostly with women, queer people, and artists. And then I went to a big brokerage firm where everyone was a guy, basically, who was an advisor. There were 3 female advisors out of 50. The politics were extremely conservative and not particularly open to conversation, I would say. All the support staff were women. It was literally 1973. I didn't know that this world still existed. And it was a nice place to start my business. It was a good start, but I needed to leave. It was not a good fit for me. So I went to a little firm, nice people, great community values, gave away a ton of money. They really didn't understand why I wanted to talk to people about their emotions. Not very profitable in their mind. And so I realized that I had another money story that was kicking around. And that was that I could not be a business owner. Really just an extension of the capitalism is evil money story, but between the I'm not good at math and the I can't be a business owner, I thought that I had to shelter this vision under some big institutional umbrella. Basically, I needed the patriarchy in order to have this vision happen. And I realized I actually didn't need the patriarchy at all. And so I started Modernist Financial 3 years ago. Because I knew that we could build a different kind of company. We could be fee only. So the only people who pay us are our clients. That we don't accept commissions or kickbacks or referral fees. I knew that we could be fiduciaries and hold a legal liability to say we will put our clients' interests only, not first. I knew that we could be a B Corp and a member of Business for a Better Portland. And we could commit to the political beliefs that we have. And I knew that we could change the way the world talks about money. And that we needed to. We needed to empower folks who have been systematically disempowered around their finances. This is creative people, but this is women. We know the data about girls in math classes. This is people of color. This is queer people. This is creatives. We all need to be able to believe that we can be good at money. So I want you all to close your eyes for a second and imagine a successful person in your profession, your business, your role. What do they look like? Where do they live? What's their partner like? Do they have a dog? Great. A successful person in my business looks like Steve. He is definitely a white guy over 50, and I'm not saying that because I don't like white guys over 50. It's because over 80% of people in my position are white guys over 50. And he probably lives in the suburbs. It's highly likely he has conservative politics. He probably has a stay-at-home partner. He may, given what we know about the news recently, he may inappropriately hug you at the office, unfortunately. Problem is, I don't look anything like Steve, right? And I realized that I didn't believe that I could hold this role because of systematic structures that I was trying to stand on. Did you know that it was the 1970s before a woman could get a mortgage without a male cosigner? It was the 1990s before a woman could get a business loan. A business loan without a male cosigner. I was in high school. Friends was on television. 94 to 96% of venture capital and business loans go to white men. Today, now. The structure is built in such a way that of course I don't believe I can do this, right? And we work with clients who have millions of dollars to invest. I don't look like the person that they trust with their money. And I'm a woman of extraordinary white privilege. I am highly educated. I am attractive. I'm good in social situations. Think about what this is like for women of color, men of color, queer people. So what we have to do at this point is create a new path towards a new vision of who we can be in our financial lives. It's mandatory at this point. So this is where the conversation turns and we go to the tools. So you have your little handout. Great. So these tools are we're just going to dip our toe in. I'm encouraging you to complete them at home, but I want to give you a little taste. So the first tool is called Personal Insights About Money. Here's a list of questions to guide you in this reflection process. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Just write down the first thing that comes to mind when you read each of these statements, okay? So what did you notice? Did some of your answers surprise you? How many people in this room were sat down and given the money talk? Anybody? Anybody? Ooh, 1, 2, that's amazing. That's 3, that's actually fairly good. Our families, our culture talks about sex more than we talk about money. So this tool is incredibly powerful. I recommend that you complete it for yourself, but you can also hold this as an interview and talk with people that are important to you about their experience. The next tool is called the Wheel of Life, and you'll see it on the next page. So this one this exercise will help you assess your growth and development in each facet of your life. It will also help you evaluate the degree of balance and level of life satisfaction you are now experiencing. So here's the first step. Place a dot on each spoke that indicates your level of satisfaction in that particular facet of life. Use a scale of 0 to 10 with 0 at the hub and 10 at the rim. A 0 indicates no satisfaction and a 10 indicates the highest degree of satisfaction. So go ahead and do that real quick. Great, now draw a line connecting the dots. So now I want you to take your highest facet, the one where you have the highest amount of satisfaction, and I want you to put next to it one thing you're grateful for. It could be anything, one thing you're grateful for. Great, now I want you to write next to it one thing that would make it a 10. What would shift it to a 10? Now, take your lowest facet, the one that has the lowest degree of satisfaction, and put one thing that you're grateful for. And one thing that'll make it a 10. So I'll give you an example for myself. Leisure is quite low on my wheel of life, as you can imagine, as the CEO of a startup. But on my grateful side, I feel really glad that I am the boss. I can decide to leave at 3 o'clock on a Friday. A 10 would be actually being able to use that freedom more regularly. So a 10 might be, I get to go on a quarterly meditation retreat. I get to go on a trip with my closest friends, and a solo trip to New York to go see some theater. And maybe I get to go on a trip to Europe with my partner. So I encourage you to complete this whole wheel of life. What you've basically done when you've completed it is all the things you're grateful for, those are your assets. Some of them are going to be physical, financial assets. Some of them are going to be your emotional assets, your relationships, which are key to our financial satisfaction. The 10, you've basically written out your financial plan. It's everything you want to have happen. So I highly recommend that you fill it in with as much detail as you possibly can. So the next thing is on this back page. This is really just the format we use for something called the key elements for creating your financial life plan. And you'll see underneath it, it says vision of your ideal future in 2023-ish. So what we do is that for our clients and for our company actually, we build out a narrative. This is where my fiction writing degree comes incredibly handy. See, it did pay off. And I write basically a story of where they want to be in 2023. And I recommend that person you use is looking back as if you have accomplished all the things you wrote in your 10s. So I would say something like, Georgia is delighted that she committed to putting aside time for her meditation retreats. She feels a degree of ease, quarter to quarter, that is very helpful for her flourishing business. She's put away 3 months of reserves in her personal accounts, and the company has 9 months of reserves. It's going to be fabulous. Be kind to yourself. It's very important that we be generous and non-judgmental when we write this document. Now, the cool thing about this document, go back one. The cool thing about this document is that it is a money tool for you, right? It is a living document. I highly recommend that you update it regularly. Birthday, New Year's, Passover, whatever. Something that you can regularly revisit it. It's also a good filter. So if you're confronted with some kind of financial decision that you need to make, you can use this as a mirror to reflect yourself onto and say, does this decision really reflect my values? What is most important to me? Okay? So I promised you a few next steps. So the personal insights about money, that first tool, I recommend you journal with it, make a collage, interview your friends and family, co-workers, whatever. We are passionate about getting more people to talk about money in a way that is generous and kind. The Wheel of Life, just complete that thing with as much detail as you can think of. If you want to do a remodel in the house, what does the sunlight look like coming through the kitchen window? The key elements, just write the story. Have somebody help write it with you. If you have a partner, write it together. Everybody gets their own paragraph, though, for their human capital and other things that they want to do. And then you can go ahead and clarify your goals, their concerns, upcoming transitions. This is really a financial plan. So that's that. We have a website, modernistfinancial.com. We have a section on it called Modernist University that has tons of resources, sort of the commonly asked questions that we get. So there's like, how do you find a financial planner? And what should I think about investing and cash flow? So that's all on there. We also do something called money stories, which are little 12 to 15 person conversations about money. We've got these lists of questions and recaps of the events we've done. You can just steal them and go have those conversations in your community. I highly recommend it. We've got one on, is there a responsibility associated with wealth? And how do we define plenty? How do we define enough? So that's that. And so I recommend you choose one small thing, choose an accountability partner, because Christina said we should, and choose a due date. I recommend that it be soon, maybe a week, maybe just do one little thing in the next week. So we are creating a bit of a financial revolution over at Modernist, and we want to see that the way the world works around money changes, that people who have been systematically disempowered become empowered around their money. And we need help. So we would really love it if you would engage with us. We're on the Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, yada yada. Please do some of this stuff and tell us what you discover. We'd love to hear about it. So thank you so much.